Hey, Olga, thank you for coming in today. I mean, you really have an amazing background, very, very strong. You have this degree in applied mathematics and computer science and an MBA, and you're definitely a change maker in software and also and encouraging people to get into any kind of entrepreneurship and development. So, thank you for coming in and bringing your insights to my audience.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Olga, what were the maybe three, defining inflection points in your life? And it could have been when you were 3 or 5 years old. It could have been when you were 10, inside or outside the family. Could have been moves you made inside or outside the different schools you attended. But, those three things that really shaped you to who you are today.
In my case, I believe it's not just specific things, although there were cases. I think as I grew up, I had a father who always encouraged me to do more. And he was the kind of person, he was a change maker in himself. And see, I grew up in Russia. And when I grew up, when I was little, there were still Soviet times. And he was one of those people who, among the very first ones, as soon as it was possible, wanted to build his company. He had very entrepreneurship mindset. And he always used to tell me that life is like that mirror-like surface, and you always have to go up. The moment you stop, you start sliding down. So just make sure your pace is fast enough so that you're always a little bit ahead and keep on moving. And he was that kind of person, and I think a lot of things that I do in life kind of related back to what he told me and what he taught me. Unfortunately, he died very early. I was 20, he was 44. And it was just a tragic accident and nothing we could do about it. So that then that was one of the events. His death was something that caused me to completely rethink everything I was doing in life and focus more on becoming the person that he would have been really proud of. And everything I did from that point on was also related to, would that be something that he would appreciate? And would that be something that I would make a memory of him a good one? And, I would really honor his name. So that was one of the events. And another event was when I was at working at a large international company. It was my very first job right out of college. I was so proud of myself. I was 21, 22, and thought that I was top of the world. I know everything, and I was put in a position where I was that low-level economist, and what I had to do is move the numbers from one printed sheet to a computer Excel sheet. And actually, the way they did it was really weird. They were finding some numbers by just trying to get the closest to where the numbers at the end would match in their cost calculations. And the first thing I did, of course, I changed the formulas to where they didn't have to guess and it would actually calculate everything.
Well,
And then the next step was the work became so fast that I had a lot of things, I couldn't stand idle hands. Again, I'm my father's daughter. I had to do something. So I tried to communicate to my immediate management that, okay, we have to do something. She kept saying, well, first make sure that your work is correct. Look at all the mistakes you're making. You keep putting the wrong numbers in. And I did, absolutely. So instead, I made an appointment with head of the entire finance of the company. And she was a woman and came to her and said, what I'm seeing you're doing is you're really wasting my time. You know, I keep adding the numbers from one worksheet to another. And if they were connected and they were able to just take these numbers from one department to another, I wouldn't even have to do it. You'd use me for something more interesting. I'm the one who, graduated top of my grade, and here I am just entering numbers. It should be done by anybody, not just me. So she looked at me, and now thinking back, she was an amazing woman because she didn't say, "Who the heck are you?" to even ask me that question, right? Instead, she asked me, "So how would you approach that? How would you do that?" And I explained to her that I would take a database and I would, take that worksheet, take it from one system to another. And she said, "Well, could you actually do something like that?" And I said, "Of course I could. Me, 22-year-old, I can do everything." So she actually gave me a chance. She created that executive order that made me a head of that project, said, "What resources do you need?" She made all the department heads kind of report on what their processes are. She gave me an authority to approach anyone in the company with the questions. I built that process. I quit before it was complete, but it was half functional and I had enough people to finish it. And, that also changed completely the direction of my career because I've realized that if I step in, if I take initiative, I can do anything. Really, that these things work. She could have shut me down and I would just be another clerk for the rest of my life. But she gave me that, and ever since I was taking that initiative and I was moving fast, and then my entire career, was moving much quicker because of that, because I always was looking for those inefficiencies and what can I do? What can I do proactively? How much can I do to change things? So I'd say like those are probably the things I can think right away of that were really life-changing for me.
That's really fascinating. So, your dad created a model for you, and unfortunately, and I'm sorry to hear that he passed away so young, but he instilled in you this this sort of capacity to do more, and you wanted to honor him. So that inspired you when you were very young. And then this remarkable woman who head of finance who looked at you not as a young person, but somebody who could solve problems and could improve the efficiency of the company. And she saw the capabilities and the talent you had, and she measured you on that and not on your youth, and then gave you the ability to implement uh,
Exactly.
to
And
change
the main thing, yeah, I was
change
able
the
to
course.
do it. So that's the surprising part.
Now, you got a master's in applied mathematics and computer science and an MBA. So when you were younger, let's say when you were 10 and 12, were you interested in math and things like that at the time? Or, like what were your interests to
Well, the
get you
funny
to
thing,
get?
when I was 10 and I was reflecting back on that, I actually, the one activity that I could do anytime, I did a lot of drawing. I did a lot of picture painting. I used to, and another thing, I did a lot of those pictures of beautiful princess with very elaborate dresses, and I was very particular about how to design those dresses. So thinking back, I probably could have been a clothes designer. I could have been something else. But my parents, they never really kind of supported that. They were both engineers. My mom is the she was projecting wiring systems for nuclear stations. My dad was a scientist. He was a physicist. He had a lot of inventions in physics and was working on all kinds of big electric turbines and their functionality. So to them, it was just by default, I had to become somebody technical. On the other hand, as I was going through high school, math always came easy to me. That's something I always taught all my friends math. I always explained to them. This was just something that was baseline for me. I could do math without even thinking, even the complicated tasks. I was the one to finish any test in the first 20 minutes, and then the teachers had to send me outside of classroom so that others wouldn't, so I wouldn't be tempted to help others, so they wouldn't be tempted to take my work. So to me, that part was easy. So it was kind of assumed that I would do math. Another thing I was really awesome at high school, I was the only person that would get A plus in stereometry and that 3D math. So I probably could have been an architect. But yet in college I chose, oh, and also I was a part of that big poetry group. So as I graduated, I came to my parents and I said, I want to become a writer. They said, you do what? I said, I want to become a writer. Look, I've been participating in all these art writing competitions. And look, I even got to the state level with my work. And I already had some publications of poetry. I just want to do that. I said, at the time, by the way, I was studying at the very competitive school um, with extensive physics and mathematics program. That was a very special school. I had to go through 3 levels of exams to get in. And my parents said, you put all that work getting into the school. Now you're there and you're telling us that you want to give up on math and do the writing, the literature? Well, yeah, because I like it. And so then they sat down with me on the kitchen and we had that long conversation as to how much the writers can actually be making and how you're going to sustain yourself and what are the chances of success. And I went into math, so But again, it was one of those, but it was applied mathematics. So it was interesting. I could apply it to anything. And that's when I started to realize that math is just a tool. And at the time, I thought I was using it for economics, but then I changed it. And I ended up graduating in that specialization on healthcare, actually. So my final coursework was dedicated to those studying those rheumatic illnesses and finding the correlation between various factors and finding what are the dominant signs and what are the dependent and what are the ones that are non-correlated factors in those illnesses. So it was really interesting work that I did, the research on that. And to me at the time, learning more and getting my like pre-nursing degree as part of it is something that opened completely different perspective, and I was very passionate about it. As you can tell, I get passionate about everything that I do.
So that's really, really interesting. I mean, you have this creative capability because you were drawing, and in fact,
Yes,
you were thinking of fashion as a career, but your parents who are technical, as you mentioned, your father was a physicist, your mother engineer, that they said no. So like, that's not a path for you. And then you found math very easy. So that would be sort of a natural for you to continue in this area. But it's interesting that you also had a passion for writing and poetry. So really, you're kind of like a polymath, right? So very good at
somebody.
creativity and drawing, writing, and mathematics, and of course, you got an MBA as well. So, but you said you graduated at the top of your class, so or did really, really well, and
I did.
you were at a very competitive school, and this is in Russia, I guess, right? Where
Yes, correct. And St. Petersburg State University. Yes, that was one of the best universities you could attend, one of the like top in the country.
Yeah, and just I mean, just from talking to expats who now live in the West, and the Russians or even the surrounding countries that were originally part of the Soviet Union, they would always say that the classical training that you get in Russia or the Eastern Bloc countries were, it's first class. I mean, it's superior, I would say, to what we have here, because there was this really strong emphasis on kind of the classical side of these areas. So you having a grounding then at a top school and graduating at the top of your class, it actually means a lot. So that's remarkable. So I didn't know that. So that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you apply this into healthcare as well. So I could see now why you have this path into healthcare. Okay, so you have this formative journey, you have this great education. At what point did you decide to immigrate to the US?
One story is I didn't decide on immigrating to US. I was at the time working for this large tobacco company and basically developed relationship with a colleague. And it was a 4-year relationship that had to end up somehow. And during one of my travels to the United States, I just didn't come back from my vacation. It was like very much of a spur of the moment thing. There were many circumstances surrounding that kind of led me to that decision. And I was at that pivoting point in life where that kind of made sense. But honestly, I didn't know like a month prior that I was going to do that. So, and then of course, that also led to some certain ripple effect to where I had to figure out what I'm going to do with that sudden decision and how I'm going to pivot and restructure my life. I didn't have a plan really at the time.
So, how old were you then when you made this move to the States, and that vacation wasn't a vacation, it ended up being a permanent
So
move?
20, 25, 26.
So, quite young. And
Yes.
so really, just a recent grad out of school, you get this opportunity, and then you
Yeah.
decide to remain in the US. So that's
And
interesting.
yeah, at the time I already had an experience of working with different companies. I worked for a big publishing house while I was still at school. Then I worked for this large international Swiss company when I was economist. Then I worked for the tobacco company. And at the time I was making a very fast career. I was very quickly promoted to supervisor for like a help desk across the whole company. And at the time I was leaving, I actually had a promotion opportunity on my desk to move out of St. Petersburg to Moscow to the next level of position. And instead, I moved to the United States. So it was different, yes, at the time. And of course, here, that didn't mean much because I didn't have the network. I didn't have the recognizable education here. Someone graduates, let's say Harvard, everybody knows, and everybody is, welcome, open all the doors for this person. To me, I graduated St. Petersburg State University doesn't mean anything really.
Right.
So instead, I went teaching math part-time, and then I made a family. I had a child. I had to figure out how to exist in that world, kind of navigating between parenthood and what I can do. And of course, at the time then, I decided that I'm going to do a lot of different things, and I'm going to do a lot of part-time engagements. I was teaching math at the community college. So then I also started engagement with some of the, I remembered my writing skills. I ran Russian-speaking newsletter for North Carolina newspaper. So I kind of was responsible for publishing it, writing it. It had one owners, and I ended up owning it. Then I did a lot of small marketing engagements. At the time, I was running my own marketing type boutique with beauty salons, where I was just advising them on digital marketing companies. So I considered myself a basically stay-at-home mom with a lot of hobbies, but those hobbies did take a lot of my time. None of them were really bringing significant income in. Surely kept me busy. Or I also was teaching Russian at Davidson College. Once I moved from Winston-Salem, where I lived, and I was teaching math at Davidson College, I was teaching Russian also part-time. We helped develop that department and actually grow that at where they could hire someone full-time, and kind of ran myself out of a job, but I knew that was going to happen. And then did a lot of different engagements on the side also, between running the newspaper, doing some events also. So it was a busy time, but also I was able to enjoy some time with my first child. With the second one, and I was also actively participating in an exchange program where I was a lead interpreter. Also realized that it came easy to me to just have all types of interpreting, and people were asking for me. So that was a fun side gig as well. They were all side gigs at the time.
So you're in the U.S. You're running a number of different kind of jobs at the same time, together with being a mother. And then at what point did you decide to get into software development? What was?
Yeah, I kind of landed into it. So because I was working with the Russian community a lot, at one time I had that request for connection on Facebook, and I never accepted people that I don't know to be my connections on Facebook. So that person tries to connect with me. And as I'm looking, he's involved with many different IT things in Russia, and he's posting that he's bringing his IT business in the United States. So I go, that's interesting. So I actually, instead of just denying his request, responding to him that, unfortunately, I cannot accept connecting with you because I don't know you, but I'm not opposed to having a coffee and actually having a conversation to get to know you. And so we did meet, and he said, well, you're the one that came recommended. You know how things are run. You do so many things. I'm trying to establish this remote office of this one IT group in the United States. So long story short, I did help them, and that was a Pandora box that I didn't realize I was opening, because it took me right back to IT. And basically, at the time, it wasn't just healthcare. There was a big group that was reputable. I did my homework. They actually had a good reputation. They had track in Russia. They had some offices Russia, a little bit in Ukraine. And at the time, I was just helping them establish the business. Then they reached out to me a little later when that person wasn't able to return back to the United States, asked me to take over some of the operations. Before I knew it, I was running the business. I was doing some of the initial business development. We actually started to bring in some projects. And then I did that for a while. But then after that, again, I just landed into it and realized, why did I ever think that I would exist without IT? That was something that I always was passionate about. I was a little rusty, so I had to spend a lot of evenings watching YouTube videos, catching up on some of the, information that I still wasn't up to date on. Luckily, a lot of good colleges put some of their free content on the internet. So I took advantage of some of that content. So by the time I felt more comfortable talking about, agile methodology and many other things that at the time I wasn't fully prepared at the time. So then I felt more confident about actually being fitted for the role. And then it happened so that my, at the time, good collaborator, another Olga, I met her in also in Charlotte. We ran together those nonprofit events for children of Charlotte, Russian-speaking New Year celebrations. And she had very similar background. She at the time ran her own IT shop where she developed small applications. As we met, we realized with similar background, I needed some help. I asked her to please come step in and help me with a couple of projects. And she, of course, did it beautifully. And I realized I really needed someone like her. So our involvement started to grow. But then after a while, we realized that really, in order for that to be fully adequate to our internal standards, we would have to have more control over the company. We would have to be more in, the driver's seat. And so that turned into us opening our company. That was actually a good arrangement because it worked well for everybody, including the group we were working with. We had a collaboration with them. We explained to them what we are trying to do and how it's going to benefit them, while they will not own this company, but will still have certain things and will help them grow to the standards that local companies have. That worked well until the war happened. So that's when we had to completely kind of change everything and create a very different we had to just seize that relationship, and led to us kind of moving a few people that we could. We became from having access to over 100 developers to like a little over 30, had to adjust our business model. And again, when we established our company, that's when we decided to go for healthcare only. We already had healthcare projects. We already understood the environment, but we decided to focus, and we both realized that healthcare was the number one passion for us. That was the area at which the developers had the bigger passion, and it was just natural for me coming from that background, right, to kind of make a full circle and end up solving problems in healthcare with technology.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that you did some like nursing as well. So
I did. I have the diploma that allows for me to kind of be, it's called like at home nurse. So I wouldn't be practicing. It's not enough to be hired by the institutions, by any healthcare organizations, but it's enough to be dangerous to be able to say attend to open wounds, or make shots or understand certain symptoms. So I went through that formal training by actually Academy of Medical Science on top of my formal university degree, because I had that collaboration, and I spent my Saturdays enrolled into that program because it helped me understand better what I'm trying to do with mathematics. And so, yes, we took a lot of anything from internal therapy and surgery and several different classes, and did a little bit of practice where they would take us to the hospital and make us like do the shots, help draw blood or things like that. After practicing on those rubber dummies, of course.
so that I mean, but that would give you then a deeper appreciation of healthcare. And when you moved into
Exactly.
healthcare, you would understand the medical space together with your applied
Yes.
mathematics and computer science, and then you have your business degree as well. So you have
Yes.
this company, you had to pivot because of the war, and so and you're specialized in healthcare. So can you describe, what do you do in the healthcare space? And in fact, you were introduced to me by Sally Ann Frank, who actually runs globally health and life sciences for Microsoft for startups. So, and she has a remarkable background. In fact, I think she's in North Carolina as well. I think.
Yes, she's in Charlotte, actually, not too far from me. So yes, and this is how I got to know Sally, and she is absolutely a remarkable person, and um, very influential for sure. So yes, and we started, obviously we came from a background of software product development, and been doing that for a while. To us, the approach was like with everything else, what else can we improve? Things that work well, things don't work well. Found out that startup companies and enterprise companies require a completely different approach to building solutions, that you cannot really use the same methodology. As we were fine-tuning it for years, we ended up developing our own approach to what is the best way to develop the products in the most efficient and way that really minimize the waste, because unfortunately I've encountered many times when the resources were wasted, and whether it's monetary time, team, just because of that inefficiency in the processes, or let's say approach to, you can't really build enterprise level software at a level 1, but if you approach every project as multi-step process, then each step has its own requirements, and you just focus on that by keeping the bigger picture in mind. So we've helped startups rethink their approach to product building and build the products, and actually we're actively involved in it, and we made sure that all of our developers fully understand the business model and why they're doing it, not just what needs to be done. In fact, after all these years, recently we've been implementing the model where we would be coming to startups, and the goal in mind is not to find out how much we need to build and what we need to build, but how much of it doesn't need to be coded, how much of it doesn't need to be custom built, because a lot of times we already have the components on the market that will allow early stage startups to quickly prove their business model, and they're more reliable than something custom that we can create. So understanding that landscape and seeing what else is out there is becoming important. Now, yes, Sally had actually stepped in for some period of time to help us and to be one of our advisors for the company, and I'm eternally grateful for her guidance. And of course, she's the one that knows the best, what is that approach to startups is, and she's issued the book on the startup protocol, and I definitely would recommend any startup to read that if they didn't. Kind of outlines really the foundational pieces. What does it take to actually become that technology-based innovation startup? What are the things you need to think of? A lot of times they don't think about how important the clinical validation, or what is the approach. So that book outlines a lot of things that very much along the lines of what we were doing. And that is something we did, and we learned one thing, that while developing great products is really something that we learned to excel at, but we still weren't those perfect partners to our companies. This is how I view that relationship. We really are partners to each one of our startups, more than just vendors, until we figured out how to truly give them all the tools for success. And the reason our early stage startups were failing is because they came to healthcare systems by like another point solution, and they tried to knock on those doors, and they were never opening, because it was the matter of, well, physicians don't like to disrupt their workflow, right? We all know that. They have so little time already to spend on what they're needing to be doing, that another point solution that you have to log into, remember passwords to, is just not working. While we could always help our more mature startups, and they were willing to set out the budget for integrations, we actually became this integration specialist with EHRs and component integrations. But early stage startups didn't have the budget, they didn't have that ability, and honestly, it didn't make sense for them to even be locating that type of budget for integration, because they would repivot some of their models later on. So what we did in the end, we spent a little over a year developing our own platform that is designed specifically for early stage startups, that is pre-integrated with some of the major EHRs, and we keep adding to the list, to where they can come in, and it wouldn't be the same lift to just bring them to the platform and to use that as integration tool, instead of them building their own and just charge a very small licensing fee. Again, the way we thought about it, we really wanted to make it affordable, make it fast, make it something that would not really require much thinking on saying, yes, we want that. And in that, and as I was going through business model, we realized, okay, this is not something we're going to make much money on, but that was never the goal. That was the goal, to actually help them get from point A to point B with that tool. As long as we're able to recoup some of our expenses, we know this is exactly what we needed to become best partners for those startups, and to kind of give them the right approach for minimal budget, easy onboarding, and providers already have their EHR credentials that they don't have to remember additional passwords. It's basically single sign-on. It's a serverless application. We built the bridge ultimately between startups and healthcare systems. So that's where we are, kind of the evolution of our thinking as the company, always trying to, with that pursuit of excellence and pursuit of, how do we best serve people that we want to really help make a difference in healthcare.
So what I'm hearing then is, for example, Microsoft for Startups is a kind of like an open ecosystem. Anybody can apply, and then as long as they meet the gateways or the requirements and the application form, they're in this program called Microsoft for Startups. And within that program, they can get something like $350,000 grant or a tech value, and up to $150,000 worth of Azure credits, and these are non-dilutive, so really they're grants. And then within that program, there's something called the Pegasus program, which is their unicorn builder. It's under 1%, and in fact, they just announced a partnership with NVIDIA. So NVIDIA and their open startup ecosystem is sort of collaborating with Microsoft for Startups program. And then within that entire program, and I'm just guessing, I'm probably now with NVIDIA, and there's over 100,000 startups. So that's just my guess. And they have a great health and life sciences stream, of which Sally Ann Frank is the worldwide head of that. Mm-hmm. And because you're a specialist in healthcare, then if there's startups in there and they're working on some kind of product development in the healthcare space, and that product is then targeted to some kind of enterprise out there as a client, you have tools that will help them to integrate what they're doing, what they're working on, with an enterprise out there who can be a potential client. You can make it easier or simpler.
We can, yes.
You got a framework for doing this.
Well, we're officially not a partner or not part of ecosystem, because that program is really vendor agnostic. And Sally is one of those people who's very particular about managing any potential conflict of interest. So really, we are not part of Microsoft. We are not part of, for example, I can definitely approach, and we worked with a few startups from Microsoft for Startups. That relationship was not by any ways procured by Microsoft. It was more about relationship that we had developed. And that is something that, again, there's a very fine line. And of course, it becomes somewhat challenging when you build the relationship, but sometimes they also have this very clear obligations to their organizations that they're supporting. And those organizations, again, they're not really particular to any specific vendor. We are yet another vendor, right? And it has to be fair to everybody. So we should not receive any special treatment comparing to others. It's just our job to show that we maybe, excelling at something and to be recommended more often. But again, that recommendation could not come official from organization. It's just a matter of, those people who truly worked with us typically always give us recommendations. We build our ambassador program where all of our clients always, open to making introductions and doing things. But for us to become part of some organization, that becomes slightly different route. And most of them are watching that line very carefully, where they're not showing favoritism.
So you're a tool. You're a company that has a framework and tools that could be used in AWS or Google startups. It doesn't matter what the startup is. So it could be, there's dozens of different kind of ecosystems out there. And
yes,
as long as there's a startup and then the healthcare space, then you can support them as they try to integrate their solutions
Digital
into some
health.
kind of, into
Yep.
digital health.
Absolutely. Anything. So one of the best examples we found is, for example, in digital therapeutics, anything that where that digital side can be prescribed in mental health, it's very valid. Where in the past that, let's say, digital health content, we work with one startups called Sharpen Minds. They have great library of resources of mental health videos. They've been working with the various organizations, mostly with student bodies and their healthcare systems. And in the past, it was just something that the students could have access to and enroll to, but there was never a tracking in the EHR and actual healthcare systems, whether that had even been utilized, whether, do we know if that link that we sent to a person has ever been even used? Did someone actually enroll? It's just everything goes in the black box. There's no parameters, there's no data. So now that we connected the two systems, they have a very different traction with healthcare systems because they can log in with HR credentials. That student is not becoming just some abstract email. It becomes somebody already registered in their EHR, and they have enrollment link populated where they can watch whether someone actually watched it, enrolled it, and how much have they watched. That data is there that can be connected to outcomes. And so is with many other similar startups. Anytime that utilization of the tools can be connected to outcomes, it then fits into value-based care. That data becomes crucial because then we can, in some cases, we are looking to add additional reimbursement codes just because, physicians now are able to do, let's say, certain number of touch-ups with the patients that can lead to additional codes that they can be paid on. And if we watch it and able to register those, then they have the data. And in the past, it was just another point solution where the data didn't exist. Same with devices, same, we integrated with Bina AI, which is awesome technology and able to just send that link via a phone or email, and a person looks at their phone, the vitals are being registered, it feeds back into dashboard for physicians. And of course, as they go through final rounds of FDA approval, that cannot be used yet to support clinical decision making, but it can still be a good advisory tool.
So, you work with startups. If they're more mature, it's easier. When they were early stage, there used to be problems, but then you created a platform for early stage called immigrate, and you got the system 4096 or 4096 for
correct
as a framework for digital health products. Let's say there's an enterprise out there. Let's say an enterprise that's been around. They could be some of the largest healthcare companies in the space, but their digital platforms could be maybe they want to upgrade their digital platforms. Is that something that you take on, or is that something that's not in your kind of target?
The answer is really it depends. So let's say a lot of healthcare systems use enterprise level digital platforms. They're not really in-house developed, right? So in that case, what we can find is if there are certain inefficiencies, are there any specific integrations that need to be in place? Just like, way back then when I said we shouldn't be moving data separately from one system to another, let's connect it all. We are big on finding those opportunities to where things are not talking to each other, where there are certain inefficiencies on the technology side, or let's say where bringing in some small third-party component would make a difference versus some tool that's less efficient. So we can do something like that. If the enterprise system has in-house system, which I see much less of that, yes, we can of course step in and see how that can be repivoted, redone. But because of I'm the one coming from custom software development, I do believe that it does make sense to use more of these pre-existing tools for many, many different reasons, starting with just liability for patient data, right? And having that layered accountability introduced, to really the fact that one healthcare systems are designed to serve people. They're not technology companies. I don't see any reason for them to keep those huge IT departments that, or even if they're dependent on vendors, still they're going to be responsible for their digital tools 100%. It's much easier to offset that accountability on those people who just focused on that and nothing else. So
So
again, yeah.
yeah, so what you're saying though is that you're aware of all of the components that are out there from different third-party sources, and you can integrate those. If a company comes to you, and I'm now talking about enterprise, and you can do an analysis of how they're doing things, and let's say they do have an in-house IT team, you can say, well, here's some pre-built products and that you can integrate into your existing system. You don't have to build it from scratch. We know what they are. We can help you with that integration. But if there are some areas that do require customization because there isn't any existing modules or tools out there that can be imported in, then you can build that as well. So you can do the whole 360. Is that something you're interested in, or you prefer to work on more of the startups space?
Oh, we do both. We actually had experience. Now, we're a small company, and so we are very much dependent on the ecosystem of partnerships that we also build. If a larger company comes to me with certain requests, so far it's been maybe a couple of opportunities with smaller size enterprise level companies. We approach it through those relationships. Well, I'm not, I'm understanding my limitations. We are still limited to technology assessment. And a lot of times, finding those inefficiencies also related to some of the operational pieces and processes pieces. So the way we approach that is we actually bring somebody in our partner network who is best fit to supplement that work. And we don't do it all ourselves. We work closely with people who advise people specifically on this operational processes or, understanding the other side of ecosystem. So we're lucky to have this good infrastructure where we build the network, we build the trusted partnerships. So yes, we are interested in it. Again, typically it's not just a job for us when we approach that. It's a job for us and some of our partners as well.
Yeah, I guess the advantage of a startup is you're so early in the game that it's easier to say, this is what you need to do to integrate what you're doing with the kind of the target customers you're looking for. This is the way that you should design your product. And there's already existing modules out there that you can employ rather than creating it from scratch. And because those are already tested and already have a lot of the kind of interconnections in place, then you don't have to worry about some of those aspects, right?
Yeah.
So I understand what or I get a sense, anyways, without spending like a month with you to see what you're doing. I get a pretty good or get a sense of what you're trying to do. So I mean, how do you get clients? They just referrals or?
Um, a lot of it, I would say, still majority of our clients do come through referrals. And again, we're lucky that all of our clients always bring us referrals. Once we do the good job, they always recommend us to somebody else. Sometimes it is through relationships that we build by, attending events or creating. In the past, we had some webinars. Now also we do have clients reach out to us through our website because of our platform, Emray, and asking very specific questions about integration. A lot of it, yeah, I would say still majority of it referrals or those in-person interactions.
I get invited to do a lot of conferences where I'm a keynote, and then they ask me, Stephen, do you know anybody who could speak at our conference as well? But it always has an AI component in it. So I mean, I can easily recommend you. Are you comfortable with AI, generative AI, classical methods? I mean, you have a comp sci background, so
I would do, yes. Well, of course, my background came way before there was an AI, any point of it, right? But then on the other hand, I know well what machine learning is. So it is a matter of really a lot of, and again, I can go deeper into it, but my viewpoint is most of the AI that's called AI is not quite yet an AI. It's a lot of it is still machine learning. And we've seen that as a technology company. I feel like we're probably one of the more conservative companies, because while I strongly believe that AI is about 2-3 years from really dominating most of the industries, uh, we haven't crossed that bridge yet. And when people assume that there are still a lot of interesting applications, and yes, I can definitely see some examples. To us, we do have a couple of people that specialize on just those AI applications, and we have a couple of companies that we partnered with that do nothing but AI, and we bring them in when needed. To us as a company, it's more critical to just see what is the optimal path. And, I feel like nowadays there's so much conversations about AI, and anything with the word AI gets attention, that it's a little over exaggerated, more so than it really should be. Again, it's my personal opinion. That's why I tend to kind of stay away from just getting into the midst of it and promoting, let's use AI, everybody. We will be using AI one way or another. Absolutely. We all use AI already. We have a lot of use cases that help us be more efficient and use the generative AI to create like user stories for the project. So many other things, but they still have to be monitored and procured by people, real people, because there's one thing that AI is good at processing the data, and that data is not always 100% pure. We know that, right? That's why there's all of this, dreaming and many things. And as humans, we are the only species that are capable of connecting to that stream of, I don't know, divine consciousness, whatever you call it, that gives us all these ideas, that gives us this ability to create something that's not there yet. AI can only work on what's already been there. And to us as a company, we have the goal of using our power, using everything that we know to help innovate healthcare to better really the care for all human beings. So to us, that's how we also validate everything we do. Is that something that fits our model? Is that something that fits our mission? By doing this, are we one step closer to really empowering that innovation in healthcare that makes someone's life better? Yes or no? If we can find that yes, then yes, we do it. If we don't find that yes, if it's just bringing extra, 2% in someone's revenue, then it's probably not our project.
I mean, you have a perfect background for machine learning because machine learning is applied mathematics, and then you have a computer science background. And then because you have a product orientation rather than just the technology orientation, and you have a business understanding with your MBA, and then you have your healthcare understanding. Plus, you have the software development understanding and frameworks and how to optimize and components and things like that. Then it's a great foundation for. So I call AI as the big word that includes machine learning. So
yes.
So you definitely would have the background to be able to implement it. Or to understand it, right? So,
and we do. I'm not saying that we don't understand it or don't implement it. It's just, to me, see, there's another side, and that's my other soapbox. That, the fact that all four institutes that study existential threats consider AI number one threat for humanity. And again, that's a topic for completely different conversation and a completely different thing. It's just, my thing is, for years now, I've been asking myself that question: am I contributing to that? Am I contributing to problem, or am I contributing to solution? Right? And we all should be asking that question. And the fact that we have that impending really danger that's concerning all of us and our children and their children, and who knows, maybe there is no beyond that. And we're not talking much about that. And that has to do with how do we build that relationship with AI. I'm more really tempted to have a relationship about not how we implement AI in the best way possible and how it's going to save things, but how do we slow that? How do we make sure that those ethics are in place, that those boundaries are in place? How do we define our relationship with AI to where it truly benefits the humanity? And, it is, I know that it's a multifaceted question, but to me, this is definitely an area of strong passion, So me talking to AI most likely means really not talking about how wonderful AI is, but rather how careful should we be while implementing it? What are all the considerations we should be using? And what is the joint responsibility we as technologists all have in order to make sure that that relationship is defined in a way that pushes AI threat from the number one on that list?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's a separate conversation that would be
Yep.
like an interview in itself. I'm just looking at sort of the practical side.
Yeah, so
I
I'm
mean,
happy to talk and see what I'm seeing, right? Because I've seen a
right,
lot of implementations and we
right.
participated. We did beautiful projects with machine vision. We did a lot of things, where uh, you can really use generative AI to uh, provide better guidance. We would feed huge 700-page manual for some AI implementation in some big systems, and then you just ask questions. How do I do this? You no longer need a help desk. There are so many things that you can do with just very simple applications that people don't want to think about. Absolutely, it's all there, and I'm happy to kind of elaborate on that. So to me, it's like two-part component.
Yeah, I mean, because you're in a management role, right? Because you're a founder, you're the CEO, you're in a management role. Do you spend any time playing with some of the tools that are out there?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, some. Well, unfortunately, as a small company, we all wear many tools, and I'm sure you're very much familiar. My time is also very condensed, right? You always have to figure out where is that between 2 and 3 a.m., right? Is when you get to play. So, but yes, absolutely. And I love some of this when Mid-Journey came around, right? And started drawing those beautiful pictures. That was just mind-blowing what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's LLMs, there's categorical, mathematical ways of doing machine learning, which are different from transformers. There's the Kolmogorov Arnold network paper that uh, got released this year, which looks like it's more activation occurring. It's not it's kind of like a transformer, but much more capable, though the hardware isn't there. Do do you have the time? You may not, though, to look at some of these
Not as
different
much as
models
I
out there.
wish. Yeah, not as
Right.
much as I wish. I ran across one model one time when they were using the what it's called. It's the approach. It's the similar approach to learning. It's contextual approach
Right.
to bringing around AI instead of just the training traditional. And it was really interesting for me to dive a little bit deeper into it because I've realized, yes, we as as children grow, they use the same kind of approach. It's all about just feeding additional context and keep emphasizing, and it's more like coming from the core and building around in that perception of understanding. So um, like I said, it is something that is extremely interesting, and I'm adding a little bit to my knowledge base on a continuous basis. But no, I do not have to answer a question directly. I don't have as much time as I wish I had to be able to do that.
Okay, so we spent quite a bit of time discussing your model for your business, and so the audience has an idea, like the kinds of services you offer. We talked about your background and the inflection points in your life very early on. You definitely have a very strong educational background, and then a practical application background as well in leadership and so on. I just want to spend a few minutes on your work and giving back to the community. And I should do a time check. So this is kind of live. Can you go past the hour, or are
I can,
you
yes,
okay? Okay, so you work with HIT, like a girl, and
yes.
Bluebird leaders. Can you talk about that and maybe other volunteer work that you do to develop
I
leadership in the
was,
community?
yes, I was on the board of Health Tech Women. So to me, it all honestly, giving back to community is really part of my DNA. Um, as far as I remember myself, I've always been organizing something. And that's the reason I, ran the newspaper for a Russian-speaking community for a while. And I've done a lot of events. And that's the reason I met my co-founder is we were doing a lot of events. To me, I find the things that I'm passionate about and really trying to bring it across. The Health Tech Women was another organization that I was on the board on. It's currently not as active, which actually I'm strongly considering putting together a local nonprofit organization that would kind of amplify women's voices in healthcare technology. And the reason for that, and the reason I'm so involved in all these women-focused organizations, is when I first came into healthcare technology, I kind of felt that it was very heavily dominated by a very specific demographic that didn't include me, you know, and
That's
it
true.
it was, yes. And to me, it was interesting perspective that I didn't realize that. And it was eye-opening in many ways, quite uncomfortable. And seeing that shift over the years, how even, I would find myself, even with technology, I would find myself at networking events or, the panel that would speak would contain 0 women representative, or, in a room, I was one of the 5. And that changed over the last, whatever it is, 8, 9 years that I've been doing that. I'd say it changed tremendously. And now seeing all these women, and to me, if I can even, influence it with my energy and support that, I will always support organizations that try and bring that balance, because I grew up in a country where really I'd never felt any. On one hand, that culture is very sexist, but on the other one, I never felt limited. Why should I not be studying math? Why, it was just a matter of opportunity, and never felt that I was conditioned one way or another. So here I feel like a lot of times we don't give enough information to this young women. We should be influencers. And that's another reason I was just recently participating in an event. We have this local great organization called Dottie Rose Foundation. They're bringing awareness of STEM opportunities for young girls, elementary, middle schools. So I was mentoring one of their programs. It's In Her Shoes, where they interview women in technology and they create little models of the shoes. And still, have that shoe in my office where the girls had put the sparkles in, but also they had to study what I do. They had to understand how it feels to be in my shoes. So that is the interesting part. And that is something that, to me, because I couldn't find organizations that work on AI ethics, I poured my energy towards supporting organizations that support women in my industry. And what we did is we did events, we did awareness events with Hit Like a Girl. It's a podcast that wonderful woman Joy Rios had started, and she was emphasizing the role of women in healthcare. She has her series of interviews. So I was supporting that, and we did some of the local events. Hopefully we'll still do it. She's taking a small break from her initiative, but that will to reoccur. With all the things that are happening in Charlotte, I feel like there's a strong presence of that, community of women that influence also how those partnerships are developed. And we have this new in Charlotte. I'm super excited because with Advocate/Atrium is bringing that collaboration with Wake Forest to put together this new Pearl Innovation Center, and it's going to be, state-of-the-art facility that's going to be nationwide recognized. Charlotte is finally becoming the center for healthcare innovation that I feel is long overdue. But something that's been happening, and of course with Sally being in town and some other people being there, I feel like we have this also opportunity. So again, it's just a matter of providing more resources, being accessible, and serving as that maybe role model for some of those younger people that are still thinking, will I make a difference in this industry? I want to do for somebody what has been done for me. I want to be that person to give a 22-year-old me a chance to be great, more than just what we can do. And if I can contribute to that, I will always take that chance.
So what is Bluebird Leaders?
So that's another organization that I was associated with. We are still talking about maybe that is the organization that talks about women leadership in healthcare. So Bluebird, it's a bluebird, that's a bird of happiness and bringing the luck. And so actually, Rebecca Wood is the founder of that organization. They've been around for maybe only 3 years, but already making big waves, bringing together women leaders in healthcare for various conferences, sharing those experiences. It's a very open and exchange on really what works, what doesn't, how can we support each other. It's a very supportive community. So that is something else that's been happening. And I'm not officially on board in there, but I'm one of the ambassadors of that movement. So
You
that's
were talking earlier about, finding a pathway from the ethical side of AI. There are organizations you could join. ACM, Association for Computer Machinery, is one. In fact, I'm on one of
yeah,
their
I read
boards.
it. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and IEEE is another. There's the AAAI. So there's a number of really well-established international organizations. They're headquartered in the U.S., but they're in every country, basically. Um, for example, the ACM is, 77, 78 years old, I think, now. IEEE is over 150 years old. And AAAI, they've got to be maybe 20 plus years, something like that, maybe 30 plus years, but very well established, and they have women programs as well. And they
Interesting.
definitely have ethical programs or
Okay.
programs around ethics and so on. So
That is interesting. Yes. I mean, yes, I will research some more. I think at the time I was looking for some organization that would have local presence that
most most of
yeah.
them have local chapters. So
Okay.
yeah,
And when I first started looking, it was maybe 5 years ago, and maybe at the time things had progressed.
yeah. I mean, IEEE is everywhere, right? And definitely would be embedded in your schools there. ACM would be the same. Um, for example, both organizations have over 4 million users of their products and services. So, for example, the
Wow.
ACM has 38 sub-organizations, which are organizations entity onto themselves.
Okay.
They have a women's program within those. Um, we have I'm part of them, so we have all these journals, many number one in the space. We have conferences, many number one in the
Oh,
world. And then IEEE, which is the largest technology engineering organization in the world, definitely number one. Just like ACM is number one as a computing and computing science organization in the world, IEEE is number one in engineering in the world.
okay.
And again, over 4 million users of their services and products and things like that. 400,000 members worldwide, direct members. I'm a member of them as well.
Hmm.
And I think they have, like the ACM, they have their own conferences. So probably about 2,000 conferences and things like that, workshops and so
Really?
forth.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say over 200 journals, probably. And I'm pretty sure they'd be embedded within your area and would be embedded in your universities and colleges, which are typically the big universities, they'd be embedded, right? So,
Okay.
in
Oh,
fact, you can't get tenure in a university unless you publish or do conferences with the ACM and IEEE. I mean, we're
I
big,
see.
right?
Yes.
And in fact, we set curriculum standards in computer science and stuff like that worldwide as well. The
Wow.
IEEE and the ACM together, they do things together, like setting I guess we shouldn't call them standards, but curriculum guidelines.
Okay. Makes
um,
sense. Yeah.
um, we so there's IEEE has a really strong formal um, um, ethical program, and you can join these working groups and things like that. And they
Hmm.
publish these, and they're recognized globally. So, and the UN would have programs like that as well. I was just wondering in our closing moments, did I introduce you to or did I mention the TerraSec Institute to you at all?
Institute. Is there a specific person associated with that?
Ali Kodamosini, but maybe I pre-vetted with them first to see if they were
Yeah,
interested. I'm just kind of doing live brainstorming
I
of
understand.
people that
Yes.
you could maybe work with. Could be others, but anyways, just thinking if I did an introduction, maybe have a look, and then I could sort of see from there and if there's interest. And
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. To me, I feel like where we're bringing value is really a lot of times it's about working with, let's say, venture groups or um, incubator groups. Well, they all have the same interests that we are trying to fulfill. In that case, for venture groups or even, any investment groups, when they invest into companies, their goal is to make sure that their money isn't wasted, right? Ultimately, in simple words. So what we've seen is there are many times where the companies come to us when they already deplete most of the budget because of some of the decisions that are made on that product development that are just not fitting the right model. And we are having to deal with what's left and try to, figure out how to get them operational in, very whatever is left over and try to figure out what we can substitute with what in order to actually launch them. And it happened already at least 2 times with me. And on the other hand, how often do we have to refactor 80% of the code just because it's not built in adherence to this, golden standards? So, and that's one of the reasons I feel like even Sally was suggesting, well, you really need to be talking to people who understand how important it is not to make wrong decisions and to have these trusted people that are, able to guide them across the right ones. So there is that. And then with incubators, they all want their startups to succeed, and they cannot succeed unless they come in pre-integrated. And we can put all of their startups on the platform because it's a multi-tenant approach. So the way we programmed it is healthcare system can onboard multiple innovations on the same platform. They don't have to relearn each one. They just exist as a tab so they can activate. It's just a matter of a click of a button. Let's activate that one and basically create that pilot in the box. Try this, try that, see if it makes a difference for you. If you decide that this is it, this is the way to go, then maybe it makes sense for that startup to invest into that more proper, full integration with EHR. But until then, they really have to run those pilots. They have to get this clinical validation. And it's like chicken and egg, right? You can't fully integrate until you're validated, but you cannot validate if you don't have any integration. So that's the problem we are solving.
so this is the very last question, and sort of what recommendations do you want to leave the audience?
Who is the audience?
Oh, well, the audience are there are scientists in the audience, and definitely engineers, elite developers, people in IT, sort of the more broad infrastructure IT. There'd be CEOs and investors. It's really everybody, because the interview appears across so many different geographies. And so,
I'm not sure then that I'm the one qualified to give advice to that audience. Honestly, I feel like the audience is the ones who kind of are, it sounds like, a lot of thought leaders. I feel that to me, what really worked is asking the questions, always asking the questions, not assuming that things are the way they're first presented, and asking the questions, do I know that this is truth? Can I make it better? Can I poke at it? And whenever we approach any project, whenever we approach any relationship, it's the matter of there are things that we know and there are things that other people are knowing. And depending on that, creating that ecosystem of people that are better than us at certain things has always been something that helped me move my business, and always being open to what other people think of that and who else can I trust to evaluate and who else can I trust to really do the right thing, right? And a lot of times there's a difference between people saying that they can do things and people actually doing things, unfortunately. So this is the very fine line. And as humans, there's one thing that we do have that machines don't, and that is that ability to follow our inner guidance. And I feel that's something no one can take away from us. That's why sometimes those relationships that we don't know why, but we decide that this sounds like, I had so many serendipitous moments in my life. I had so many times where I just knew that that will lead to a productive relationship. And sometimes your conscious brain cannot give you those answers, but they always unfold very beautifully. So I feel like we as humans should focus more on listening to our inner guidance instead of just our brains. And sometimes it's a better guidance. I don't know, me as a technologist, it's strange to hear from, right? But I feel like in many cases, we're dependent too much on that just analytical side. And that is how we miss who we really are and what makes us different from machines and what gives us chance.
So, I mean, those are great, thoughtful, sort of nuanced sort of recommendations to the audience. And, you know, you really are quite a remarkable person. You have this creative side, an artistic side. You have a literary side, a poet. You're a mathematician. You're a computer scientist. You're a business person. You're an entrepreneur. You have a background in healthcare. You're an ambassador for women and empowering women in technology and entrepreneurship. You're an educator. So really, you sit across so many different aspects and just a really good model for everybody in the world of all kinds and genders and things like that. So thank you for coming in and sharing your expertise and your insights with our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.